The return. The Vexillian Grand Council chamber had never been so quiet. Grand Archon Selvig stared at the holographic display with 8 eyes widened in disbelief. The neural interface connecting his crystalline exoskeleton to the station's sensors couldn't be malfunctioning, not all of them simultaneously. "This is impossible," he whispered, mandibles clicking nervously as the display showed thousands of unknown vessels approaching Vexilia Prime. "Verify these readings immediately." Chief Sentinel Nixera floated forward, her bioluminescent tendrils pulsing with anxiety. "We have verified, Grand Archon. 3 times. The readings are accurate." She paused, her voice dropping to a barely audible frequency. "The ships are human." The word sent a ripple of alarm through the chamber. Humans were extinct, eradicated 500,000 standard years ago, when the Vexillian Imperium had deemed their unpredictable evolution and aggressive expansion too dangerous to the carefully maintained cosmic order. The Great Purification had been thorough. Earth had been sterilized, human colonies systematically eliminated, and survivors hunted across the stars until the last enclaves fell silent. Or so they had believed. "Impossible," Selvig repeated, but with less conviction. "Our ancestors eliminated that species completely. The archives are clear." "The archives appear to be incomplete," Nixera replied, bringing up ancient historical data alongside the current sensor readings. "These vessels employ technology that bears human signatures, but far beyond anything our records suggest they were capable of." The massive central display shifted to show the lead ship, sleek, asymmetrical, and radiating energy patterns that the Vexillian scanners struggled to classify. It moved with an impossible grace that defied known physics. "They're hailing us," announced the communications officer, his exoskeleton paling to a nervous blue. Selvig straightened his 8-foot frame. "Open the channel." The holographic display flickered, and a figure appeared that made several council members retreat involuntarily. The human looked deceptively fragile, smooth skin without protective plating, only 2 eyes, and no visible defensive adaptations. Yet something in its gaze made Selvig's ancestral memories stir with instinctive fear. "I am Admiral Ilara Voss of the Earth Reclamation Fleet," the human announced. Her voice translated smoothly into Vexillian harmonic patterns. "It has been 496,732 standard years since your civilization attempted to erase mine from existence. We have come for a reckoning." Selvig fought to maintain his composure. "This is Grand Archon Selvig of the Vexillian Imperium. Your presence is unexpected. Our records indicate your species was deemed incompatible with galactic harmony and was contained." A cold smile crossed the human's face. "Contained. An interesting euphemism for genocide, Grand Archon. Your ancestors destroyed Earth, murdered billions, and hunted the survivors across the stars. They were very thorough." She paused. "Just not thorough enough." "How did you survive?" Nixera asked, unable to contain her scientific curiosity. "The void between galaxies is vast and dark," Admiral Voss replied. "When your ancestors began their purification, a few thousand of us fled to the intergalactic darkness in experimental long-range vessels. We've been there ever since, building, evolving, and remembering." The display expanded to show the full human fleet, thousands of ships in perfect formation, each radiating energy signatures that the Vexillian systems couldn't properly classify. 500,000 years, Voss continued. 500 millennia of exile, during which your people forgot us, but we never forgot you. Every child born in the void learned about Earth, about what was taken from us, and about who took it. Selvig felt cold dread seeping through his neural network. The human fleet vastly outgunned the Vexillian home defense forces. If they sought vengeance, "What do you want?" he asked, mandibles tight with tension. "That's the question, isn't it?" Admiral Voss replied. "For thousands of generations, we planned for this moment. Our ancestors dreamed of returning to burn your worlds as you burned ours, to make your species understand the terror of extinction. She paused. But we are not what we once were. 500,000 years changes a species, Grand Archon. We've evolved beyond what your ancestors feared. The display shifted again, showing a planet that couldn't possibly exist. Earth, blue and green and vibrant with life. This is Earth as it was, Voss said. And this, the image changed to show a barren, scorched world, is what your ancestors made of it. We don't want revenge, Grand Archon. We want justice. We want recognition of what was done to us. We want reparation. Selvig's mind raced through diplomatic protocols, but nothing in his training had prepared him for this scenario. These events occurred 500,000 years ago. No living Vexillian participated in or remembers. Don't, Admiral Voss interrupted, her voice sharp. Your civilization has perfect records. Your species passes memories through genetic encoding. You know what happened, even if you weren't there. Her eyes narrowed. Your defense grid is powering up. Grand Archon, I wouldn't recommend that course of action. Selvig gestured quickly to Chief Sentinel Nix Era, who issued a silent command to stand down the automated defenses. What would you have us do? Selvig asked. Your full council will meet with my diplomatic team on neutral territory, the third moon of your outer planet. We will discuss terms for peaceful coexistence and reparations. Admiral Voss leaned forward. You have 6 hours to prepare. Remember, we've waited 500,000 years. We can certainly wait 6 more hours. The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. We should strike first. War Minister Krell chittered, his battle-scarred exoskeleton clicking with agitation. Our planetary defense system would be insufficient. Nix Era interrupted, displaying analysis of the human fleet. Their technology appears to operate on principles we don't fully understand. Probability of successful defense is below 20%. Selvig stared at the fleet hanging in orbit around Vexilia Prime. Their position was perfect, a tactical formation that covered every escape vector and optimized weapons coverage. How did they become so advanced? He wondered aloud. Our ancestors determined they were too dangerous because they were unpredictable and aggressive, yet technologically primitive. Isolation and necessity, Nix Era suggested. Without access to established galactic knowledge, they developed along unique technological paths. And 500,000 years is a very long time for any species to evolve. Selvig turned to his council. Prepare for the meeting. We need to understand what they want and what they're capable of. War Minister, discreetly assess our tactical options. Historian Thal, retrieve everything we have on humans and the Great Purification. We need to know what we're facing. As the council members dispersed, Selvig remained staring at the display. The human ships hung in perfect formation. Silent, powerful, and patient. They had waited 500,000 years for this moment. Somehow, Selvig doubted the Vexillian Imperium had 6 hours. Admiral Ilara Voss stood on the observation deck of the Earthlight, watching the gleaming blue-green world of Vexilia Prime rotating slowly below. It looked so peaceful from orbit, much as Earth must have appeared to the Vexillian fleet before they reduced it to ash and radioactive waste. The diplomatic team is ready, Admiral, reported Commander Takashi Ito, her executive officer. His features, like hers, showed the subtle genetic modifications that 500,000 years of controlled evolution had produced: slightly enlarged cranium, reinforced skeletal structure, and the neural interface nodes visible at his temples. And their response? Ilara asked. They've agreed to meet on Vexilia Tertius as you suggested. However, they're requesting more time. 24 hours instead of 6. Ilara smiled thinly. Stalling for reinforcements, no doubt. Grant them 12. Yes, Admiral. Takashi hesitated. The fleet captains are asking about the next phase. Many expected different orders upon our arrival. Of course they did. For 500,000 years, humanity had nurtured dreams of retribution. Children raised in the void between galaxies had grown up on stories of Earth's glory and its violent end. Generations of humans had prepared for this moment. The return, the confrontation, the justice. But justice and revenge were not the same thing. Remind the captains of their oaths, Ilara said firmly. We didn't survive 500,000 years of exile to become what the Vexillians always feared we were. Some of the captains feel we're being too lenient. Captain Okoro in particular. Darius has always been impulsive, Ilara interrupted. His grandmother was the same way. Remind him that our strength doesn't come from our weapons, but from our patience. As Takashi left to relay her orders, Ilara returned her gaze to the planet below. The Vexillians were scrambling. Their orbital traffic patterns had increased threefold since the human fleet's arrival. They were evacuating key personnel, no doubt, preparing for the worst. Her neural implant pinged softly, alerting her to an incoming transmission from the memory of Earth, one of the 3 massive generation ships that had carried the last humans to safety when the Vexillian purification of the solar system began. The ships had been preserved through the centuries, kept operational as living museums and reminders of humanity's past. Admiral, the aged voice of Keeper Santiago greeted her when she accepted the call. The Ancestral Council requests confirmation of the first protocol. The first protocol, humanity's original plan for their return. Complete eradication of the Vexillian species. An eye for an eye, a genocide for a genocide. The first protocol has been suspended, Keeper, Ilara replied firmly. We're pursuing the third protocol instead. There was a long silence. The Ancestral Council expresses concern, Admiral. 500,000 years of preparation have given us perspective, Ilara finished. When we fled Earth, we were desperate survivors. Now we're something more. The ancestors understood this possibility. That's why they created the third protocol. Another pause. Very well, Admiral. The Ancestral Council will support your decision, though not without reservation. Santiago out. Ilara closed her eyes, feeling the weight of billions of dead humans across time and space, the pressure of their expectations, their hopes, their thirst for justice. We won't forget you, she whispered to ghosts 500,000 years dead. But we won't become what destroyed you, either. She opened her eyes as Commander Takashi returned. The diplomatic shuttle is ready, Admiral. And we've detected energy signatures consistent with Vexillian battleships entering the system. Right on schedule, Ilara remarked. They're going to try something foolish. Should we intercept? Ilara smiled. No, let them come. Sometimes the most effective demonstration of power is showing exactly what you can survive. She straightened her uniform. Prepare the diplomatic team. It's time to reintroduce humanity to the galaxy. Reckoning and redemption. Grand Archon Selvik felt distinctly uncomfortable as his shuttle approached the neutral meeting ground on Vexilia Tertius. The barren moon had been terraformed with breathable atmosphere centuries ago, but remained largely unused. A strategic reserve rather than a colony. Now it had become the stage for the most important diplomatic encounter in Vexillian history. The human delegation has already arrived, reported Nixera, studying her data interface. 6 individuals only. Minimal security. War Minister Krell clicked his mandibles skeptically. A trap, obviously. Their ships maintain position above us. They could strike at any moment. If they wanted to destroy us, they could have done so already. Selvik countered, though uncertainty gnawed at him. Have you received confirmation from Fleet Commander Zorax? Krell's exoskeleton shifted to a deeper blue, a sign of satisfaction among Vexillians. The battle group will arrive during our negotiations. 20 capital ships with full complement. They'll provide insurance. Selvik wasn't convinced the reinforcements would make any difference if the humans decided on violence, but he kept that thought private. The shuttle descended toward a prefabricated structure that had appeared on the moon's surface, clearly of human design. It was elegant in its simplicity, with clean curves and surfaces that seemed to absorb and reflect light simultaneously. Fascinating architecture, murmured Historian Thal, the oldest member of the delegation. Nothing like the crude utilitarian structures our records described. The shuttle landed on a designated pad, and the Vexillian delegation disembarked. Selvig, Nixera, Krell, Thal, and 2 security officers, whose combat exoskeletons had been modified to appear diplomatic while maintaining full defensive capabilities. The humans waited for them at the entrance to the structure. Selvig studied them carefully as they approached. They were smaller than Vexillians, with their strange soft exteriors that seemed so vulnerable. Yet there was something about their stillness, their calm assurance, that made his instincts prickle with warning. Admiral Voss stepped forward. In person, she was even more disconcerting than in holographic form. Her eyes, only 2 of them, seemed to see everything at once. Grand Archon Selvig, she said with a slight incline of her head. Welcome to neutral ground, Admiral Voss, he replied, mirroring her gesture. The Vexillian Imperium approaches these discussions with open minds and a battle group heading toward Vexilia Prime, she interrupted smoothly. 20 capital ships, if our sensors are correct, due to arrive in approximately 43 minutes. Selvig felt his secondary heart flutter with alarm. Their intelligence capabilities were clearly exceptional. A routine patrol, War Minister Krell interjected. Of course, Admiral Voss replied with a small smile. Just as our 97 scout ships now positioning themselves throughout your system are merely conducting routine surveys. The revelation sent a shock through the Vexillian delegation. 97 additional ships. Their sensors had detected nothing. Shall we begin our discussions? Admiral Voss suggested, gesturing toward the entrance. We have prepared appropriate accommodations for your physiological needs. The interior of the structure was a single large chamber with a circular table at its center. The walls appeared transparent, offering a 360-degree view of the moon's stark landscape, but Selvig suspected they were actually sophisticated display screens. Once seated, Admiral Voss activated a holographic projection in the center of the table. It showed Earth, first as a vibrant living planet, then its destruction, and finally a current image of a dead world, still bearing the scars of its sterilization 500,000 years later. For context, she explained, to ensure we all understand what brings us here today. Historian Thal leaned forward, his ancient exoskeleton creaking slightly. If I may, Admiral, our historical records indicate that the action against Earth was taken because human psychological and developmental patterns showed extreme unpredictability and potential for violence. The Vexillian High Council of that era determined that humanity represented an existential threat to galactic stability. Yes, Admiral Voss agreed. Your ancestors feared what we might become. So they attempted to exterminate us before we could realize that potential. She gestured to her delegation. And here we are, 500,000 years later. The question is, were your ancestors right to fear us? The question hung in the air, heavy with implication. Our terms are simple, Admiral Voss continued after a moment. First, formal acknowledgement of the attempted genocide against humanity and its inclusion in all Vexillian historical records. Second, restoration of Earth to habitability through your most advanced terraforming technologies. Third, recognition of human sovereignty and our right to exist in this galaxy. Fourth, a non-aggression pact that will be enforced by our continued presence. War Minister Krell bristled visibly. You're dictating terms as if you've conquered us. The Vexillian Imperium does not respond to threats. Not threats, Minister. Facts. Admiral Voss's voice remained calm. Your reinforcements have arrived, by the way. Perhaps you'd like to see what happens next. The walls of the chamber shifted to show space around Vexilia Prime. The Vexillian battle group had indeed arrived. 20 massive warships taking up defensive positions around the planet. What happened next occurred so quickly that Selvig's multiple eyes could barely process it. The human fleet, the visible one, didn't move. But 20 tiny points of light appeared simultaneously near each Vexillian warship. There was no visible weapon discharge, no energy beam, nothing to indicate an attack. Yet all 20 Vexillian warships simply stopped. Their engines died. Their lights went out. They hung in space, completely powerless. A targeted electromagnetic pulse of our design, explained one of the human delegates, an older male with dark skin and silver hair. Non-destructive. Your ships are undamaged, merely inactive. Life support systems remain functional on minimal power. War Minister Krell leaped to his feet, battle appendages extending reflexively. Minister, Admiral Voss said quietly, "Please control yourself. We could have destroyed those ships as easily as disabled them. We chose not to." Why? The question came from Nixera, her scientific curiosity overriding diplomatic protocol. Admiral Voss turned to her. "Because we've evolved beyond the need for that kind of violence. Your ancestors feared we would become destroyers of worlds. Instead, we've become something they couldn't imagine." She paused. "We don't want to eliminate the Vexillian people. We want justice, not vengeance." Selvig studied the human admiral carefully. "Your people have nursed this wound for 500,000 years. Generations born in exile, raised on stories of what was taken from them. How can you claim to have moved beyond vengeance?" "Because we had time," Admiral Voss replied simply. "Time to grieve, to rage, to plan our revenge, and then to question it. Time to evolve past the limitations your ancestors feared in us." She leaned forward. "Your species passes memories genetically. Ours passes wisdom culturally. The lesson we learned over 500,000 years was that becoming what your ancestors feared would only prove them right." The chamber fell silent as the Vexillians absorbed her words. "Your terms," Selvig finally said. "They are not unreasonable, but there will be factions within the Imperium who will resist, who will see accommodation as weakness." "There are similar factions among my people," Admiral Voss acknowledged. "Some of my captains wanted to burn Vexilia Prime the moment we arrived. Hatred is easy. Reconciliation is harder." Historian Thal's ancient voice rasped into the conversation. "I have studied the Great Purification extensively. It was a moment of fear. Fear of the unknown. Fear of difference. Our ancestors saw in humans a reflection of their own violent past and reacted with preemptive violence." He turned his 8 eyes toward Admiral Voss. "They were wrong." The admission sent a ripple through both delegations. Selvig straightened, coming to a decision. "The Vexillian Imperium acknowledges the historical wrong committed against humanity. We will meet your terms, all of them. Earth will be restored, your sovereignty recognized, and our historical records corrected." He paused. "But I would propose an additional term." "Go on," Admiral Voss said. "An exchange of knowledge and culture. Your people developed in isolation for 500,000 years, following different technological and social paths than the rest of the galaxy. There is much we could learn from each other." For the first time, Admiral Voss smiled genuinely. "That is acceptable, Grand Archon. In fact, it is precisely what we hoped for." As the delegations continued their discussions, finalizing the details of humanity's reintegration into the galactic community, the disabled Vexillian warships were gradually reactivated by human technical teams, a gesture of good faith. Later, as the Vexillian delegation prepared to return to their homeworld, Admiral Voss approached Selvig privately. "There's something you should know, Grand Archon," she said quietly. "Something not in our official historical records." "What is that, Admiral?" "When our ancestors flowed into the void between galaxies, they discovered something there. Something ancient. Something that changed us." Her eyes held his gaze steadily. "The beings who found us, who helped us survive, they had been watching this galaxy for millions of years. They had seen species rise and fall, civilizations bloom and wither. And they had a particular interest in humans." Selvig felt his exoskeleton cooling with sudden apprehension. "Who were they?" "They called themselves the Precursors. They said they had seeded this galaxy with life billions of years ago, and that humans were their last experiment, designed to evolve rapidly, to adapt, to think differently." She smiled faintly. Your ancestors weren't entirely wrong about us. We were unpredictable by design. Why are you telling me this? Because the precursors sent us back for a reason. Not for revenge, but to prepare. Admiral Voss looked out at the stark landscape of the moon. Something is coming, Grand Archon. Something even the precursors fear. And when it arrives, this galaxy will need humanity's unpredictability and the Vexillian Imperium's order, working together. As Selvig absorbed this revelation, he understood that this day marked not just the return of a species thought extinct, but the beginning of something much larger. Humanity hadn't just survived. They had returned transformed, bearing knowledge from beyond the galaxy's edge. Perhaps, after all, the greatest reckoning would not be between humans and Vexillians, but between all the galaxy's children and whatever darkness approached from the cosmic void. We will be ready, he promised, extending a clawed appendage in the human gesture of agreement he had studied. Admiral Ilara Voss took his claw in her hand, sealing a pact 500,000 years in the making, and setting the stage for challenges yet to come.